Professor Nam-Yong Lee's commentary, Long, Why the Republic of Korea Fails to Attract Regional Headquarters, RHQ, of Global Leading Firms, and How to Turn the Game Around. A subsidiary branch, is a lower-tier organization that executes goals set by the headquarters. Its core functions center on sales, customer support, production, and limited decision-making, while the key authority over profit and loss and major risk remains at headquarters. By contrast, headquarters is the organization that holds decision rights over strategy, budgeting, personnel authority, internal controls, risk management, taxation, and data governance. A regional headquarters, RHQ, is a decision-making hub that performs those headquarters functions at a regional level, and it is not a factory but a heart. Therefore, attracting RHQs is not a competition over rent or subsidies, but a competition to export the reliability and predictability of a nation's operating system. In this commentary, I dissect the issue through a relationship-based framework. I will first identify stakeholder groups, clarify how their relationships generate friction costs, explain how those costs reshape RHQ location decisions, and then present clear prescriptions in the form of national standards. The core is simple. The moment you separate tax rates, wages, and logistics into isolated variables, the answer becomes blurred. Only when institutional trust and continuity of data operations are treated as a single integrated system can RHQs come in. The starting point of international comparison is numbers. The RHQ market is already gravitating toward places where cluster gravity has formed. The representative case is Singapore, where reports have stated that as of 2023, there are around 200 regional headquarters of multinational corporations. The meaning of this number is not merely success in attraction, it indicates that a self-reinforcing structure has been completed in which legal, accounting and consulting services, treasury functions, insurance, internal controls, data centers and cloud services, as well as international schools, healthcare and housing all follow and scale together. As RHQs increase, professional services expand. As professional services expand, RHQ transition costs decline, and as transition costs decline, RHQs increase again, forming a positive feedback loop. The Republic of Korea's weakness here is not that companies do not come, but that the mechanism by which headquarters functions scale is weak. Even if the Republic of Korea is strong in manufacturing and infrastructure, if it is doubted on institutional consistency and continuity of data operations required to place decision rights locally, RHQs will not come and only subsidiary functions will remain. This gap cannot be fixed with short-term subsidies, and it can be changed only through national operating system standards. That is why I conclude that the moment the Republic of Korea tries to attract RHQs as if they were factories, failure repeats itself. To sharpen international comparison, the issue must be converted into the friction cost of decision-making. To make a single decision, an RHQ simultaneously calculates legal review, regulatory interpretation, approvals for data integration, workforce redeployment, and audit responses. The cost accumulates not only in money, but also in time and uncertainty. Once the accumulated burden exceeds a threshold, companies do not move to the cheapest country. They move to the most calculable country. This is precisely why the rule of law, regulatory quality, and administrative predictability become the primary indicators of investment attraction. The first condition for RHQs is the rule of law and predictability. Because an RHQ is an organization that holds decision rights, it instinctively avoids countries where decisions can later be retroactively reframed as legal risk. A quantitative indicator that captures this is the Rule of Law Index of the World Justice Project, WJP. In the 2025 WJP Rule of Law Index, Sweden is ranked 4th, Singapore 16th, the Republic of Korea 19th, and the United States 27th. This is not an emotional contest over which country is more advanced, but an input variable for the probabilistic models that multinational firms use when deciding where to place internal control and compliance functions. Sweden is strong not simply because of welfare, but because its institutions operate predictably and thereby lower transition costs. Singapore, despite being a small country, designed law, taxation, finance, and data governance as an integrated package and became an Asian operating system. By contrast, in the Republic of Korea, Even when the intent of regulation is sound, enforcement and interpretation can fluctuate, and that fluctuation is converted into cost from the RHQ perspective. RHQs move not by patriotism, but by probability, and probability appears as metrics. Therefore, policy must shift from what to promote to how to execute predictably. Here, I strongly criticize the Lee Jae-myung government. RHQs cannot be attracted by political slogans, and the moment the government frequently changes regulatory signals and shakes tax, labor, and data policies within short-term political frames, the Republic of Korea is classified not as a headquarters candidate, but as a compliance response market. What firms experience is not press releases, but the consistency of enforcement decrees, administrative notices, and interpretive guidance. If the Lee Jae-myung government truly claims to pursue growth, it must start not with moral lectures scolding companies, but with raising the predictability of the national operating system through measurable improvements. The responsibility lies entirely with the governing power. The essence of taxation is not high versus low, but calculability. The claim that RHQs do not come because corporate tax is high is only half correct. In international comparison, what matters is not the nominal rate itself, but how stably and predictably taxation of headquarters functions is administered. The OECD indicates that the global average statutory corporate income tax rate, which was 21.7% in 2019, has stabilized around 21.2% in 2025. Therefore, a definitive frame such as the Republic of Korea is the highest in the world, around 24%, does not hold statistically, and the more important issues are volatility and interpretive risk. Singapore clearly provides official guidance that its corporate tax rate is a single rate system at 17%. What RHQs see here is not a low tax rate, but clear rules. When rules are clear, uncertainty declines in operating headquarters functions such as transfer pricing, intellectual property, royalties, and treasury. When uncertainty declines, internal control costs fall, and when internal control costs fall, headquarters functions come in. Singapore created this virtuous cycle through institutional design. The Republic of Korea cannot win by adjusting the rate by 1 or 2 points. RHQs ask, can we calculate under the same rules 3 years from now, 5 years from now? The more the Lee Jae-myung government strongly shakes corporate tax signals under the justification of securing tax revenue, the more RHQs update their beliefs in the direction of avoiding the Republic of Korea. People say the economy is psychology, but RHQ psychology is ultimately probability, and that probability is determined by institutional trust. Therefore, the government must end the tax rate debate and begin by legislating standards of tax predictability. Labor is not about wages but about transition costs. An RHQ is not a stable production line like a factory. It is a transition organization that continuously redeploys itself in response to market change. Functional integration, regional restructuring, workforce redeployment, and redesign of internal controls are routine, so both flexibility and stability in the labor market are required. I call this flexicurity, and this is precisely where I see the strength of Northern Europe. Sweden accelerates transitions through a strong social safety net. Because transitions are fast, headquarters functions can operate smoothly. This is not a slogan for making layoffs easier, but an engineering design in which the nation absorbs the costs of mobility and retraining to lower corporate transition costs. The Republic of Korea moves farther from RHQs the moment conflict costs rise. When labor relations become politicized and personnel adjustments immediately escalate into social disputes, RHQs do not place headquarters in the Republic of Korea and leave only subsidiaries that do assign tasks. In this situation, firms are not looking at average wages, but at adjustment costs, litigation risk, and reputational risk. I assert that if the Lee Jae-myung government approaches labor through a political moral binary of good versus evil, RHQs will move even farther away. RHQs do not look at whose justice is right, but at whether transition is possible. The prescription is clear. The solution is not a one-dimensional approach such as deregulate layoffs, but a policy package that makes transitions flexible while protections are precise. Job-based wage systems, retraining vouchers, outplacement support, and faster dispute resolution must be integrated. Only with that integration will RHQs judge that we can restructure the organization in the Republic of Korea as well. What government must do is not agitation, but institutional design that lowers transition costs in measurable terms. Logistics is not port speed but total cost of ownership. The claim that RHQs do not come because logistics costs are high is also wrong if the structure is missed. In the 2023 Logistics Performance Index LPI of the World Bank, Singapore is placed in the top tier, and reports indicate the Republic of Korea is evaluated around the 17th range. This means the Republic of Korea does not fail because it is logistically impossible, but because the definition of logistics that RHQs experience is different. For RHQs, logistics is not merely port and airport speed, but the time cost generated by repeated customs documentation, approval delays, and regulatory compliance. Time cost is opportunity cost, and opportunity cost is calculated as total cost of ownership TCO. The United States has headquarters even when logistics rankings are not perfect, because the depth of its capital markets, legal services, and data industries is overwhelming and offsets certain inefficiencies. By contrast, even if the Republic of Korea's logistics infrastructure is strong, if regulatory approval and audit systems interrupt data operations, TCO rises and RHQs leave. I redefine the Republic of Korea's issue not as weak logistics, but as large indirect logistics costs. Those indirect costs largely arise from administration, regulation, and data governance. If the Lee Jae-myung government tries to solve logistics only through infrastructure budgets, failure repeats. What matters for RHQ attraction is not containers, but the speed of decision-making. Decision speed is determined not by the number of customs counters, but by unified regulatory interpretation and automated digital administration. The engineering of logistics is process redesign, not hardware expansion. Therefore, before expanding ports, the government must reform processes to remove redundancies in approvals, verification, and audits. If digital and data operations are interrupted, RHQs exit immediately. The essence of an RHQ today is a data control center. Finance, risk, supply chain, pricing, HR, security, and audits must connect on a single screen, and if that connection breaks, a headquarters is no longer a headquarters. The RHQ asks only one question: will global data operations be uninterrupted in this country? If cloud integration becomes dominated by exceptions and approvals, and if security and audit standards clash with global operations causing repeated stoppages, RHQs leave. The reason is not ideology but operational risk. If the government treats data and cloud as an object of control rather than the engine of industrial competitiveness, RHQs will see the Republic of Korea not as a strategic center, but as a compliance response center. The moment the Republic of Korea becomes a compliance response center, corporate costs rise and headquarters move to places like Singapore. Singapore is strong not because it let everything go, but because it clarified global operating principles and reduced interruptions. Data does not become safer the more it is controlled, it becomes safer the more it is standardized. The prescription is to build national standards for data operations. Public and private sectors must co-establish standards for data movement, encryption, audit logs, and incident response, and link those standards to international certifications. The Republic of Korea must become a country where companies do not run around seeking exceptions, but where compliance with standards leads to automatic approvals. This is precisely the operating system upgrade RHQs demand. I assert that the moment the Lee Jae-myung government delays this standardization, it effectively exits the RHQ competition. When prescriptions are structured through FEA, the answer becomes visible. I view the nation as a single operating system through the lens of the Federal Enterprise Architecture (FEA) of the US federal government. RHQ attraction is not only the task of the industry ministry, it is an enterprise-level task combining finance and taxation, labor, justice, digital, education and settlement, and diplomacy and trade. Stakeholders include multinational headquarters, domestic subsidiaries, government ministries, local governments, labor markets, professional services industries, and citizens. When these relationships are harmonized, RHQs multiply. When they collide, RHQs disappear. The relationship-based conclusion is simple. When national rules reduce trust among stakeholders, that trust decline is converted into friction costs and headquarters leave. The United States tends to separate standards and responsibilities by function and execute them systematically. Singapore leveraged its small scale to package rules and execution so firms can obtain a calculable environment. Sweden created a structure where, even with high burdens, institutional trust and transition systems lower transition costs. The Republic of Korea has strong hardware, so what remains is to remove bugs in the operating system. The name of that bug is uncertainty. I believe the Lee Jae-myung government is enlarging that bug. Regulations grow, signals fluctuate, and firms stop because they cannot predict the next interpretation. The short-lived satisfaction of pressuring firms leaves behind long-term hollowing out of jobs and tax bases after RHQs leave. What is needed now is not denunciation, but the government fixing its own rules to match international standards. A government that avoids that responsibility is not qualified to speak of growth. The conclusion and prescription are a national OS upgrade to remove the one uncertainty. I state the conclusion clearly. The cause of RHQ failure is not 3 high costs, but 1 uncertainty. Uncertainty and unpredictability drive RHQs away. RHQs can come even if taxes are somewhat higher, even if rents are higher, and even if labor costs are higher. But the moment regulatory interpretation fluctuates, transition costs are large, data operations are interrupted, and CEO risk premiums rise, RHQs leave. The prescription is not subsidies but standards. First, the Republic of Korea must legislate standards of regulatory predictability, mandating pre-guidance, consistent interpretation, and change roadmaps and minimizing volatility in administrative interpretation. Second, the Republic of Korea must build standards of labor flexicurity, making transitions flexible while protections are precise, supported by national retraining and outplacement systems. Third, the Republic of Korea must finalize global operating standards for digital, data, and cloud, redesigning processes so that compliance with standards leads to automatic approval under the principle of uninterrupted integrated operations. Finally, the Republic of Korea must target RHQ function packages. Treasury, risk management, global procurement, cybersecurity, and regional R&D functions should be designed as a single package. When those functions enter, professional services and settlement infrastructure expand, and a self-reinforcing cluster forms. That is the global standard and the world best practice that Singapore has already executed. Reportedly, Singapore hosts roughly 5,000 RHQs, Sweden about 2,000, Hong Kong about 2,500, Shanghai about 1,000, and the Republic of Korea about 100 as an estimate. If the Lee Jae-myung government truly wants to revive the economy, it must immediately shift from politics that attacks firms to politics that fixes the national operating system. Only when the people awaken can the nation truly live. Thank you for watching Professor Nam-Yong Lee's commentary, Long.